Welcome to Cobras and Fire. My name is Bakko, and today I am joined with Jonathon Shank. How are you, Jonathan? How was your day, man? What did you do today?
Funny enough, I actually just finished recording an episode of a podcast with George Porter Jr., the founding member of the Meters and one of the funkiest bass players alive. And so it's been a day full of amazing things, connecting with people like yourself.
Let me ask you. Well, you know what? Before I get too far into it, let's get a proper introduction. You, of course, the Terrapin Station uh, is what you call your media outlet. We'll touch on the Deadhead theme there, I think, at some point. But what's your title? How would introduce yourself to the listener here? How would you
Yeah.
introduce who you are?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me and good to see you. Um, I'm the CEO of Terrapin Station Entertainment. We're a artist management and production company, and we do everything from traditional artist management to licensing IP from studios like Disney and Endemol and all kinds of different partners, and bring these iconic characters to life on stage. So we do a bit of that, and then we also present shows in stadiums, MLS, MLB, and NFL. And so we work across a lot of different forms of entertainment, and a lot of it non-traditional, but we like to apply a lot of what I would say traditional marketing ethos and guidelines to non-traditional entertainment properties, and have spent a lot of years producing shows and applying that strategic touring model and volume to all of our projects.
A while back, we kind of shifted a lot of our interviews away from entertainers or celebrities, of however you want to put it, to getting kind of, we do a lot of music industry talk, which I find is a lot more interesting at times, at least conversationally. So I'll get into some of that as we go here. But I do have kind of a question, and I'll follow it up with kind of where I'm going with this. I did a little research on you, so I kind of have an idea. But do you mind saying how old you are? A ballpark is fine if you don't want to say the actual age.
Yeah, no worries. I'm 48. I was born in 75. So,
Okay.
a lot of my you know, kind of experience in music was coming up through the 80s and 90s.
The reason I ask is because, well, you look at something like Firefest recently, which a guy supposedly in your field, in his early 20s. You could look at another more of a rock metal one, which is kind of more our genre, Blue Ridge Rock Festival. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but that one actually went off and everything happened. It just was a complete shit show. And then, even talk about things like cryptocurrency. Where I'm getting here is that there was a movement a few years ahead of all that stuff happening, where it was like the old way is bad, stupid, and anybody who has any experience doesn't know anything. I'm going to take on this enormous task. I'm going to be a 24-year-old who handles cryptocurrency. I'm going to book models to come to the Bahamas and pet pigs in the water while we have Blink 182 playing backstage. And I don't need experience. I have the new vision and all that stuff. We're starting to learn when it comes to some of these bigger projects that there is a bit that it can be overwhelming. There's a lot to it, and experience is actually an asset.
It's easy to have an idea and a dream. It's really hard to execute it properly. I think a lot of people have big ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Having the wherewithal and the bandwidth, the experience, and understanding how to lift something up is an entirely different skill set than having the creative mindset of planting the seeds of something that could be great. What I see with a lot of these things is that for the people that stick with experienced companies and firms, there are plenty of people that have been doing this for a long time that are open and willing to do the new model, so to speak. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that really is the solution to what you're talking about, is that most people, the smart ones that have been in the business for a long time, they know how to pivot as needed, because this business has it's fluid. And think about the evolution all the way from vinyl through cassette through CD through digital, and all of the challenges that the recorded music industry has faced throughout each of those times. And think about it also in the way of also the, as you're talking about, the live industry, through and through, people need to be able to pivot, and I think there are plenty of the problem with the Fire Fest, et cetera, and we've all seen the movie, is that ultimately you had somebody who had a big idea, who didn't have any experience
Hmm.
either in planning events, producing events, or understanding how to empower an audience or build a true core audience around something. So from my standpoint, uh, if the audience sticks to uh, experience, presenters like Golden Voice, who does Coachella every year, and the Live Nation festivals, the Danny Wimmer events, that they're going to be solidly produced and
Hmm.
presented events, the Louis Messina events, et cetera, and um, and there's enough of them to go around. When some of these things come in from the outside and they sound too good to be true, they probably are.
And that's actually kind of where I was going. I wasn't shooting down the idea of or like you. I love the way you put it, like pivot to newer thought processes. It's more that like in the moment, in hindsight, they seem to think a little bit differently. If you listen to them, I'm talking about the characters that kind of at the head of this thing, but bringing in experience to just handle some basic logistical stuff that you have there's no reason for any 25-year-old to really understand how to take care of parking for 25,000 cars or whatever it is you're talking about. So it isn't about not moving forward or saying old is good, new is bad. It's more of like the naivety, which was kind of also a little, I don't know, not verbose, but just braggadocious a bit and getting burned. I don't know. It just kind of shows that it does matter that you have some experience and talented people with the new vision.
I think in any business, you learn, right? It's just a matter of the people that you surround yourself with.
Well, you like
And
to learn without committing fraud, though, right?
well, I wouldn't say that was, I don't know if that was a learning experience or not for him, but that's,
Mm.
that's a bit of an extreme example over there.
I was
Yeah.
speaking generally. I mean,
Yeah.
we all make mistakes and learn from them. We don't all commit fraud and go to prison for
No,
those mistakes. So, all right.
absolutely.
Well, oh, just a real, have you ever, you've done a lot of stuff over your career, and I'll back up in a second. But have you ever done a festival? Have you ever put together like a weekend kind of deal?
Um, we've been part of a lot of festivals, but I've never produced a festival myself. All of our events have been at the theater and arena level and now stadium level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the field you're in doesn't really seem like something that which is don't get me wrong, it's a pretty cool job, but it doesn't seem like something that like one person actually aspires to. You almost kind of get into a field and then start going, this actually could be my thing. When did you actually decide this is what you're, how did you get into this, all that kind of stuff? It's kind of interesting to me.
Well, part of it is, now having been doing this for a long time, I have experience doing a lot of different things, and really after what makes me feel good, and that could be in the form of a new artist, or that could be in the form of a new YouTube channel, or that could be, maybe in the form of a new TV show. And so I look at these things completely objectively and can get passionate about a project, whatever vertical it's in, and don't just kind of box myself in and say I'm a manager, I'm a producer, I'm a
Hmm.
curator of exhibits. I think for me, the real answer to your question is, look, I set out, I thought I was going to be an A&R guy at a record label, and I thought I was going to have a very traditional type of music industry career and career arc, and work my way through the ranks at a record label. As it turned out, I ended up on the live side of the business, and was at first an assistant at a boutique agency, and ended up running that agency about a year after I was hired. And some of the artists on that roster were Marshall Tucker Band, Jefferson Starship, Robbie Krieger from The Doors, 10 years after, Dave Mason from Traffic, and a handful of others. And that's really where I cut my teeth on booking events and booking artists. And during that time, I think I booked probably over 1,000 shows or 1,500 shows for a lot of those incredible classic rock type artists. I parlayed that into a job at a management company and was doing some day-to-day work for them, looking after Isaac Hayes and War. And that's when I started taking on management clients of my own, like Particle and the Disco Biscuits, and moved into the jam scene, and which at that time it wasn't even called the jam scene. It was really organic at that moment, and that was really a scene that I was passionate about, and so I was able to develop a lot of relationships through these early times, and honestly use a lot of the relationships that I had built booking those shows for Marshall Tucker and Dave Mason and Starship, and carried that over to the more contemporary jam artists. So I did have a very almost traditional path, and then I was an artist manager for about 20 years. I've been a manager for 20 almost 25 years, but I was strictly an artist manager for about 15 20 years before I produced anything. And so the production stuff really grew out of when I was working at I'd taken a job at Azov, at Frontline Management, Azov Geary Paul, AGP Management, under
Paul Geary?
Paul Geary,
Yeah, okay.
Jared Paul, and Irving Azov. And initially, I was brought on to work with the Smashing Pumpkins, but after after that didn't work out, I started signing other acts and ended up creating a business model to produce these shows. That's the same model that I use today. And so I kind of became like a hybrid artist manager and producer. And that's really how that happened. And so, but I don't really discriminate when it comes to if I go see an artist
Yeah.
tonight that I absolutely am blown away by, I'm going to be gravitating towards wanting to manage them. Or if I go home and see an incredible YouTube clip or channel, I'm going to shoot off an email and see if there's an experience or something that we can create around that. So that's just kind of how my brain works.
So let me promote my personal YouTube channel, and you let no, I'm just kidding. But you're kind of an old soul musically. Then, if you've been in the business, are these bands that you're fans of? Where does your heart kind of lie musically? Besides the
Oh
Grateful
yeah,
Dead, I
well,
have a bunch there, by the way.
yeah. So I grew up in my house, in the basement of my house. I think we had about 300 Bob Dylan artifacts in the basement, and I probably knew, I don't know, several dozen Dylan songs by the time I was a toddler. And
Oh boy, I'm sorry,
so
Jonathan. I had no idea.
so that was that was an
Yeah.
early, I don't even think I knew, but that was an early influence. And so all that classic rock stuff was around. And yeah, that's really where my heart is. And also I lived in New Orleans and went to Tulane, so I really love funk and jazz and soul. But in through the 80s, I everything about Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith and Poison, and went through all of those
Oh, yeah.
phases.
Oh, really? Oh,
You
nice.
know, prior to getting to my Grateful Dead phase. So look, I think I appreciate all different genres of music. I saw the Brandy Carlisle and Friends show recently, blew me away, and we saw the Eagles Steely Dan show recently, and that was amazing. And so we're from a musical standpoint, um, all over the place. I love what Marcus King is doing. I love what Billy Strings is doing. I love what Grace Bowers is doing. There's a lot of great stuff out there right now, and yeah. So I've always found a way to, no matter how far I go into the Disney ecosystem, to keep my feet on the ground in terms of the type of music, really always reaching back to my core and my roots.
A couple things. I'll get back to the Well, I'll wait for the dead thing. I have some fun stuff there. But on our show, we say rock's not dead, and we try to like promote a lot of new up and coming artists rather than. I mean, there's plenty of legacy acts that we talk about and enjoy. But if there's something that's fresh that we like to that really hits us, we try to push it. You have to have some like younger bands, artists. It doesn't have to be rock that you're into.
I just hit on like three or four things. I mean, I love what Marcus King is doing. I can't wait for him
This is a
to.
rock and metal show. I had no idea.
Yeah. So he's these are all incredible guitar players. I love what the band Goose is doing. They're fantastic. I love what Billy Strings is doing. I don't know if you're familiar with
I
him.
am with him, yes. And
He's
Goose.
just fantastic. And I love a young guitar player named Grace Bowers, who is out of Nashville, 17-year-old, and really just taking that incredible blues discipline, that Sly and the Family Stone mentality to the next level.
And did I hear you right? You were raised and grew up in New Orleans, or is that just where
No,
you?
I grew up in Philadelphia, but then I went to Tulane and lived in New Orleans. So yeah, I had kind of a good, good gumbo of music coming at me throughout the
Okay.
my childhood.
Well, yeah, I Daryl Hall was on the show, and well, he's a
Oh,
Philly soul guy, man. I mean, you don't get
I
much better than that
love
guy.
him. Yeah, he's I was just listening to Hall and Oates today, and what a legend.
Absolutely. And well, Bob Dylan is from Minnesota, where I'm from and currently sitting, St. Paul. And for whatever reason, he really we don't treat him like we treat Prince around here. I'm not sure what the problem is. I mean, he's iconic. There's no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, he's look, I mean, he's in his own lane, and his songbook is unparalleled. I loved actually. I just watched The Greatest Night in Pop, the documentary about We Are the World, and there's a
Hmm.
great
That's
great
really good.
scene. It's really good in that there's a great scene towards the end where Stevie Wonder and Dylan are doing a little bit, and it really seemed to light Dylan up at that moment.
Yeah, for
And
the most part, didn't it seem like prior to that, like Dylan was like, "What are we like?" The only guy he almost looked like confused at what was going on compared to everybody else, kind of laid back and loose, and he was just like almost seemed curmudgeonly.
well, he has such a unique style that to sing in unison or in harmony
Yeah,
for him. And I remember
that's a
actually it
great
was the
point.
same thing actually when Dylan toured with the Grateful Dead in '87. If you go back and listen to that stuff, you have Bobby and Jerry in the background harmonizing, and Dylan's like right on top of him or right below him, or he's doing his Dylan thing. Um, and part of what makes Dylan Dylan is that delivery, that
Hmm.
unbelievable,
Sure.
guttural, unpredictable delivery of the songs. So yeah, I mean, I think that was a cool moment in that film, and there was something for everybody in there. I thought, for everybody, every music lover in that film.
I agree. I thought it was really well done. It was I don't know. Was it just fun to watch? So many people are just pimping it. You know, it's definitely getting enough love. But let's get into a couple of things I have to talk about as far as the industry that I'm hoping maybe you have some insight on with your experience. Why is ticketing such a shit show?
Well, listen, there's a lot going on here. Ticketing is a shit show. First of all, you have to understand that the first thing a ticketing company will say is that the artist is setting the ticket price, and
Yeah.
that is absolutely true. Okay, it is absolutely true that the artist sets the ticket price. What the artist doesn't control are the fees on top, and that's actually where things have gotten out of control. And the other part of ticketing that's gotten out of control is how normalized the secondary market has become.
Bingo.
As a result, we've normalized the secondary market as a result of bots and whoever else is scooping up these tickets, the unnamed folks that are scooping up these tickets that have no intention of going to these shows. And there are artists out there who have figured out loopholes and ways to work around this, and no transfers and on things. But that presents challenges too, because there are a certain amount of people that can't make it because they're sick or something came up in their life or other factors. So it puts an artist in a tricky position. From this standpoint, I say the artist sets their ticket price. What they don't have control over is the fees and what happens on the secondary. And the fact that as a music fan, we've normalized the secondary to the point of, hey, maybe I'm not even going to check Ticketmaster. I'm just going to go straight
Mhm.
to StubHub or SeatGeek. And the lines are blurred now because SeatGeek has official contracts with venues, and they've become an official ticketing vendor. Again, nothing against that. I think that's actually the best way to go. But the lines are blurred between what's on the primary and what's on the secondary market. It's just from a consumer standpoint, I'd say confusing, and from an industry standpoint, I'd say all we control is the content that we control, which is the shows or the artists that we're putting into the system.
Don't you think though that that push to make scalping legal was to make it easier for me to sell you a ticket? It wasn't to create this industry
Oh,
of.
it's
I mean that was not the purpose. At least that's not how it was pitched to the
no,
public.
it's become an opportunistic endeavor, and it has spawned a tremendous amount of smaller secondary ticketing platforms and
Hmm.
outlets, and you're just not even sure at this point what's reputable or not. And I feel for the average music fan who's only maybe going to one show a year, who just doesn't know how to navigate this. It's not as straightforward as, I don't know about you, but I used to just go line up at the mall at Ticketron, for a ticket. Um, so it's tricky. And then even when you transact, you're kind of holding your breath, going, "Am I going to get the tickets? Is this going to work out?" And
Yeah.
there have been a lot of guardrails put in to protect the consumer, but it's still a tricky marketplace.
I'm going to push back on you a little bit on the artist involvement. For one, they've totally signed off on dynamic pricing with that's been well reported. And I'm sorry, but that I just for me personally that's shady. And also, it's been pretty reported that plenty of the high end artists, not the ones struggling to get from show to show. I'm talking Metallica, that kind of level, where they're actually in cahoots with the secondary market. They're setting aside a certain amount of tickets that are supposed to be sold to, like, say, a VIP fan club, like 5,000 tickets per show. They're giving those to a StubHub at face value and then taking 40% of the resale that StubHub marks up. So they're double dipping basically, and they are involved and they are doing these stuff, and these things are out there. And it seems, for me, I almost blame the consumer. It's like, at what point do we go,
There's
once you hear that's going on, do you go, well, I'm not buying any more concert tickets through these people. I'm going to go to a club show or something.
so you hit on a lot of different things.
Fair
Ultimately,
enough.
you're right about the artist and the dynamic pricing, but remember the first point you made. For a lot of artists, they're not toggling into the secondary world. There are artist examples out there that do that. I do not believe
Sure.
that that's the majority of artists,
I'll
at
concede
least
that. I
from
don't
my
think it's majority of them. Some of them
yeah
are.
from yeah that those. And by the way, those practices have been going on for years, going all the way back to the linear traditional ticket agents. Um, However, on the primary side, what that's supposed to protect against is to test the barriers of what the ticket price should be before it goes to the secondary and somebody else gets their hand on that ticket.
Hmm.
Now, I think that dynamic pricing is it's confusing for the consumer, because you might go on to the map on Ticketmaster and see one seat for $99 and another seat for $350, and not understand necessarily why there's that big of a gap in those seats. It really, in a lot of ways, it's become the ticket market, right? It's not the way that it was before, where you would put all of your tickets on sale
Bingo.
at a certain price, unless you're blowing out every ticket on the on sale. it's just not the way that it is. There's just a lot of fluidity within what, how people are treating their ticket prices.
I guess I'm a bit of an idealist on this because I don't think I disagree with anything you just said, but I think because I don't care what the cost is, the market is what it is. That's not where my issue is. My issue is it was $200 when I logged in, and at checkout it's $400.
Well,
That is that is not looking at two different seats and saying this one's 99, this one's 400. A lot of that's just the way it is. But I just think I would again, idealistically, it's a it's allowing me to sit in a seat. It shouldn't be a stock market, like you said. You said it's more like a
that's
ticket
right.
market, and it shouldn't be. That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, we're all playing again. But it's also, if you want to go see a basketball game, it's the same thing.
I'm like,
It's just,
for what it's worth. I'm against it across the board. Tickets to anything. It should be like, here's my money. Where do I sit? And it should be as simple as
exactly.
that. Yeah,
Amen.
but well, oh, fair enough.
Amen.
Well, how involved you do a lot of like really big time shows like in stadiums and stuff. How involved are you in the actual ticketing process? Is that really part of something that you're involved in, or is that more of a? I mean, because you do like Peppa Pig. By the way, if you ever get into Bluey, my grandson will definitely be asking me to go. But I'm getting at is there. You do from Billy Joel to Peppa Pig, that kind of stuff. You
Yeah.
do a wide range of stuff.
Okay.
How involved do you get into the actual ticketing process? Is it the
Great
entity?
question. If we're producing the tour like Peppa, then we're across the ticket prices. The most sensitive thing about those kinds of tours is that you have to think that, just like you said about your grandson, you got to think that most families are buying anywhere between 3 and 6 tickets. So you really are kind of overcompensating for that fact when you're setting the ticket price. There's a real ceiling on those shows. When you're talking about Billy Joel, Stevie Nicks, those ticket prices are largely set by the headliners team and the scaling. We are across those things. And ultimately what they do is they try to come up with a blended average of ticket price to come to an ATP that makes sense. And the really smart managers and agents are really looking at those maps and determining what those ticket price, what those ticket levels and ticket prices are, and how many levels of ticketing will super serve their fans. But in terms of the bigger shows, what you do ultimately is just figure out what your average ticket price is going to be, and then you just start carving it up based on what your P1s are.
What's a P1?
Yeah, that's your price level one. Sorry,
Oh,
that's
okay.
sorry. Excuse me. That's your price level one ticket.
Well, I mean, I totally knew, Jonathan. I was doing that only for the
Yeah,
listener.
yeah. All good, all good.
Well, I'm guessing this is going to be the answer to this is going to be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But do you go out and like bid your services to clients, or do they basically come to you and say you got a good reputation? What is the how do you end up doing Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks?
Well, that particularly grew out of we had started kind of representing um, MLB, MLS, and NFL stadiums and working with them to bring in more shows. When we started working with the Cowboys, Billy Joel had played the baseball park prior to this, and so everybody thought it would be a great idea for Billy to move over to the stadium. And so it was a long process, but ultimately we're an extension of these teams where we're communicating with the ecosystem of agents, managers, promoters, and all of the partners, and looking at the budgets, looking at the projections, looking at the ticket prices, making sure that it makes sense for the team, making sure that the team is not going to lose money, looking at their parking, their food and beverage, their suite income, all of those things. Just really an extension of the team from a live entertainment perspective. But yeah, we're really proud of this work, and we've got some Luke Combs shows this year and some Kenny Chesney shows, and these Billy Joel shows, one in Dallas and one in St. Louis later this year. And the goal is just to continue to build out this network of professional sports teams, or semi-professional teams. I mean, as long as they have a facility.
Talking about the Cowboys, right?
I am an Eagles fan, but
Nice. Yeah. Well, over the Cowboys, I'll take the Eagles, but yeah, fuck the Eagles.
um, so yeah, that's we'll move past that. But yeah, the
Yeah.
the idea is that there is a lot that comes in our way, and there's things we get excited about and are reaching out to partners about. It's a pretty even flow, I would say, of what's coming in, and kind of as a inquiry, so to speak. But
Mhm.
we have worked with all of the record labels and the studios, and a lot of partners at this point. So there's a regular communication about things that becomes just part of our regular rapport.
And if I understood all that correctly, and by the way, correct me if I didn't, a lot of this is the like the venue, like the Cowboy Stadium representatives come and saying we want Billy Joel here.
Correct.
And how involved directly are you typically with the artist?
The artists themselves, I mean, only through the representatives.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
On those particular shows. When we manage an artist, we're intimately involved, of course, in everything that they do. But on these shows where we're presenting, everything is done through the artist reps.
So being that you wear so many hats, like because you just talked about you do represent artists as well as book artists you don't represent. I guess I'm not even sure where I'm going here. Like so you want to is there any conflict there where you're like, well, yeah, I'd like to book Billy Joel here, but I'd also like to book this guy. And that's just
No,
an
no.
example. I know that
It's
that's not
it's
an apples to
uh,
apples thing, but
Look, there's a strategy with all of these things, and you have to, and an algorithm to them. And a lot of the artists that we work with are in varying development states, so they might not be playing
Mhm.
arenas or stadiums. So no, there's
Right.
not a
That's kind of what I was
conflict.
getting. It wasn't a great
Yeah,
comparison, but
yeah. And
but
honestly,
do you
there's
ever want to like?
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. You were carrying it. There's a little
I
lag all of a sudden, but
Go for it.
yeah, that I know like you probably don't have a Billy Joel kind of equal to equal example, but like, is your heart more pursuing maybe the artist that you manage versus the venue reaching out to you about, hey, can you produce a show, and then we'll figure out if Billy Joel can come in.
Um, it's I mean, look, presenting a Billy Joel show is like bucket lists for me. So
Okay.
having any involvement and being part of the ideation of that show is an incredible it's an incredible moment for myself, for our company, and but in terms of yeah, look, I wake up in the morning and think about all of it. I think about the artists, I think about the projects, and I, honestly, I follow what makes kind of what makes me feel good, what I'm passionate about, and I'm passionate about uh, building family entertainment. I'm passionate about managing certain artists, and that I can have an immediate impact on, and I'm passionate about presenting shows.
Mhm.
I've got a great team, and nothing happens on your own. I've got an incredible team of people here that work with me that have deep experience, and that's part of what my experience and what I've learned is just how important it is to have a great team and have great people around you, and maintain these relationships. That's really the core of everything that I do. Like, there's a lot of it sounds maybe like there's not crossover, but the thing is that the same promoter for Peppa Pig is the same promoter for Billy Joel in Texas.
Mhm.
It's the same person. So, maybe it's two different people that work in the same office, but don't, what I like to say is, as all of these projects, whether it's a book tour or a tour for podcast, or once you get into a certain market or a certain city, there's only a handful of first class options in each one of those places to present or promote a show.
Podcast tour, you say?
I do think there is a future in podcast touring. I think that it's a little
There's some
early.
examples of it.
Yeah.
Last podcast on the left is a fairly successful touring podcast that we all are envious of. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all about that, just figuring out, for me, just following what makes me passionate.
well, Jonathan, before I get into the Deadhead stuff, and then of course what we're here to promote, I did have something from I want to read and then kind of comment on from the press release that I got regarding setting this whole thing up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right. It says since 2012, Shank has produced, that's you, 1,500 plus live shows, sold in excess of 2 million tickets, and grossed over $110 million in box office sales. And I just got word from Taylor Swift. She calls that her 2023 summer.
Yeah, that was like 10% of her summer. That was like one show.
I wasn't sure if you were gonna laugh at that or like whatever.
Oh man, well, I love Taylor Swift. I'm have just the most massive amount of respect for her as a songwriter. And there's this moment where she was on Saturday Night Live, and I was actually in bed, and because Saturday Night Live was on pretty late, and her performance, first of all, I couldn't believe that she performed, I believe it was almost a 10-minute a 10-minute performance. It actually compelled me to get out of bed and get closer to the TV. I just was so blown away by what she was doing and the artistry and the songwriting. So respect to the Swifties.
You have just made half our audience angry and half happy as hell.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into Terrapin Station is the name of your company. Obviously, a nod to the Deadheads or the Grateful Dead. I can't let it pass that you mentioned your fandom as a phase, your Grateful Dead phase. So I'm happy to hear that it was just like a summer of, whatever.
No, I was diehard Deadhead. I mean, yeah.
Still are, I assume.
Of course, yeah. It's in my blood. Yeah, of course. I have like almost in like some kind of like savant fashion, the set lists, a lot of the set lists memorized in my head, and the dates of the shows. A lot of the marquee shows or tours, just similar to you become a scholar of the band. And I did get a chance to see Jerry with the Grateful Dead about almost 50 times. And that was certainly life-changing. I was definitely the guy who was writing down all the set lists, studying them afterwards, going back and re-listening to them and 100 times over, and trying to figure out the nuances in the jams. And what I found was that I wasn't I wasn't alone as a Deadhead. I knew that. I wasn't alone in the Deadheads who wanted to aspire to be in the music industry. And that's actually was one of the most interesting things, is that so many of the music executives now have roots as a Deadhead. And
well, they toured a lot, so
they toured a lot, and a lot of people have taken their marketing techniques and their kind of grassroots approach to building touring, core audience and touring model. A lot of people have adopted that to more contemporary artists and projects.
If they were still active with Jerry, they're pretty sure they'd be all backing tracks at this point, right?
Well, they had already graduated to the teleprompter by 95. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with the teleprompter, but
well, when you've got 300 songs in your canon, then
yeah, absolutely. Well, they're gonna be the Dead and Friends. Is that what they call it now? They're gonna be playing the
Dead
Sphere
and
in
Co.
Vegas.
Dead and
I'm
Co.
Dead.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. But yeah, they're playing the Sphere in Vegas residency, I believe. Well, as a promoter, tell me your thoughts on the Sphere, and then are you going to go see the show?
100%. I'm going to go see the show. I've been talking to Mickey Hart a bunch recently, and he's just amped up. It's going to be such a special presentation visually and sonically, and I know that the fans are going to love seeing the Sphere. I went to see U2 at the Sphere recently,
Oh my
and
God, how
great,
was it?
unbelievable. I mean, just absolutely, absolutely unbelievable. So I think it's one of these things where this is what I say about it. My analogy is that U2, it was incredible, but it was also the first pancake. You know what I'm saying? It was the
Mm-hmm.
first pancake at the Sphere. The second and third pancakes are always better than the first pancake.
Mm.
And so I think that, meaning that I think as people understand the tech, as bands start to adapt to what is possible, what the capabilities are, I think they'll be able to take it into fifth, sixth, seventh gear. It going. I think that you'll get a much fluffier stack of pancakes. Uh,
I'm as visually stunning as the thing is. I'm actually, when I read about how they set up the sound, I'm actually more intrigued to be in the room to hear that. Any way you can describe was the sound at all?
Sonically, what I would say is the room provides for incredible separation, and that what I mean by that is you could really feel Edge's guitar, and it was certainly different sonically than your normal arena show. You felt almost like you had headphones on.
And for people that don't know it, that's because there's not a standard PA. The entire visual light screen is tiny speakers, kind of angled at it. But well, that's encouraging. Well, Jonathon, I couldn't have enjoyed this more, considering you kind of popped on my radar. I'm like, well, let me dig into this guy a little bit. You have a podcast that I believe, as of this coming out, your first episode will already be out. Well, what's the name of it? Tell us about it and promote yourself, man.
All good, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. This whole thing has happened organically. It's called The Jam, and we're exploring the evolution of music through like key genres, events, and having a lot of great musicians on, like Randy Jackson, Billy Cobham, George Porter, Samande, Disco Biscuits, and it's been amazing. Just really revisiting some of these legacies and some of these untold stories from a lot of unbelievable moments, going all the way back to Woodstock and the Laurel Canyon scene, and up through Horde and Bonnaroo, and all the way up through today, and up through some of the artists that we were just talking about, and what they're contributing to the scene. And every episode we really dig into what the connective tissue is, into their collaborations, whether they were collaborating with the Beatles or the Stones or Hendrix or the Dead, and really dig into those relationships, and also how it connects to the mainstream. And so much of what we experience now, whether it's in film or TV or bumpers as things go to commercial, are somewhere at the roots of this music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what the podcast is all about, and just having fun with friends and some good free flowing unscripted conversation, and hopefully lifting up some musical heroes.
And I assume, like most podcasts, you can find this pretty much anywhere podcasts are found.
It's produced by the Osiris Network, which is have done some amazing podcasts, and is founded by Tom Marshall, who wrote a lot of the Fish songs. And so, yeah, it'll be available Spotify, Apple, Amazon, everywhere you get your podcast. And thrilled to get it out there in a few weeks, and for everybody to hear about Randy Jackson jamming with the Grateful Dead, and
Hmm.
and Robbie Krieger writing "Light My Fire," and George Porter going on tour with the Rolling Stones.
You made a comment there that reminded me of something I meant to ask you. You don't mind if I circle back to our ticketing conversation, do you?
Yeah, let's go.
You've done a handful of charity events, and to me, that gets to be really sticky when we're talking about a secondary market because we're trying to raise money for a charity. Are there anything I don't know, stumbling blocks or guards in place to help prevent like a Ticket King or a StubHub from like profiting off a charity event that's really just trying to fundraise?
It's nothing foolproof, but I think there are ways of putting up guardrails to protect to a certain degree. Um, there, there's certain allocations of tickets and the way that you roll the ticketing out that can be very, very helpful tools. But ultimately, you need to make sure that your tickets are priced properly and that you keep as much on the primary as possible and raise as much money as you can. I mean, I agree. I mean, listen, there are a lot that you identified one thing. There are a bucket full of things in terms
Yeah,
of raising money at music events or entertainment events. They're great drivers, but they still cost money.
yeah.
So, and I think what you're talking about, it's just part of it, right? I mean, it's just part of our capitalistic society. I do think that when you're raising money, there is a bit more. I would like to think there's a bit more empathy with
That's kind of where I was going. Yeah.
with the consumer, and just to say on our shows, on our charity shows, it's not something we have encountered, but I imagine if you had, um, a massive A-list talent, a Harry Styles on a show or something that you'd have to really protect yourself in a much different way.
You're a man of some influence in this industry. Do you mind if I share with you my personal fix for this whole thing that
Come
also
on,
saves capitalism?
of course.
Pick a window of time, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is. Point of purchase, ticket sales only. After that, it's a free for all.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the ticketing companies can come in, but nobody can buy a ticket. There can be every ticket has to be available for purchase at whatever price you want to set, at whatever fee you want to add. It's all right there. But for the first 48 hours, people who actually want to go to the show get a chance to buy that ticket, and then you can the Johnny Come Latelys can pay $500 for a $100 face value ticket, and I don't care about that.
Yeah. All right.
All
It's a
right, fair enough.
solution. It's part. Listen, it's part of the solution. That's what I would say. It's not part of the problem.
I just wanted to share that because I'm not just calling out a problem. I actually have thought about how to fix it. But anyway, well, Jonathan, I can see why you're a success in this business. You've been a really good balance between candid and sharing some insight, but also like not getting too deep and too murky that you're going to get yourself in trouble. So kudos to you, and it was a pleasure meeting you and having you on the program. And all the best to you and in your podcast, The Jam.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
All right, man. Have a good night.
All right. Thanks.